Breaking right now, police in Nassau County, New York, confirming they responded to a swatting call at the home of the very judge who is overseeing Donald Trump's state civil fraud trial.
Yeah, there have been a trend in New York City and in Washington, D.C. of high-profile people being swatted, those fake alarm calls. This one coming ahead of closing arguments in that state case. Today, this is a live look right now outside the courthouse. Mr. Trump is set to arrive any moment. The former president will not be addressing the court since the judge in the case brought out more rules, including that Mr. Trump would have to stick to evidence. He could not campaign. He could not say anything negative about the court. Dre Clark is live from that courthouse with more. Dre.
Well, good morning. I just had a conversation with the PIO, Public Information Officer with the Nassau County Police Department, and he tells me they are investigating a swatting incident that occurred at Judge Arthur Engoron's home there in Nassau County. That call came in at around 5:30 this morning with police officers and a bomb squad responding. Ultimately, they were able to determine there was no imminent threat. And some have speculated that this may have been some sort of delay tactic for closing arguments to happen here at the courthouse in Lower Manhattan. But as of right now, there has been no indication that the judge plans to push anything back. So we're right on schedule, and we're expecting the former president, Donald Trump, to arrive here at the courthouse within the hour. We also know the former president is still interested in doing his own closing argument today here at court. But Judge Engoron has made it very clear that's not going to happen. Initially, the judge had agreed to allow Mr. Trump to do his own closing argument, but there were stipulations, and apparently Mr. Trump's legal team did not like the terms that the judge set. In fact, in his response to the former president's request to offer his closing argument, Judge Arthur Engoron had this to say. He would not be allowed to introduce new evidence, comment on irrelevant matters, or deliver a campaign speech, or impugn the judge, his staff, the attorney general, her lawyers, or the court system. Mr. Trump's attorney, Christopher Kise, responded by saying, "You are not allowing President Trump, who has been wrongfully demeaned and belittled by an out-of-control, politically motivated attorney general, to speak about the things that must be spoken about." Mr. Trump's legal team also calling Judge Engoron mean and nasty. Now, the judge said after not hearing from Mr. Trump's legal team by noon yesterday, he assumed Mr. Trump did not like the terms that he set, so he rescinded his decision to allow Mr. Trump to speak in court today. So we are now one step closer to the former president's civil fraud trial reaching a conclusion. The former president continues to call the trial rigged, a scam, and a form of election interference. But there certainly is a lot on the line for the former president. He could be forced to pay a $370 million fine and lose control of his family's owned and operated real estate empire, which has made him a very wealthy man. New York State Attorney General Letitia James says Mr. Trump, his two sons, Don Jr. and Eric, lied for decades about their father's wealth and overinflated the value of some of their real estate holdings to get better terms on bank loans and insurance rates. The Attorney General says they committed fraud, and the judge agreed, actually already rendering a partial judgment, saying that he does believe the Trumps committed fraud. Mr. Trump and his sons deny those allegations. Now, so here we are 11 weeks later after more than 40 witnesses took the stand and a lot of courtroom drama. The judge will hear closing arguments today and eventually render his decision. And Judge Engoron says he hopes to have a decision in place by the end of this month. Meanwhile, again, Mr. Trump is expected to be here at the courthouse here within the hour. He has expressed interest in still wanting to speak, but Judge Engoron, at least as of yesterday, saying that is not going to happen. But either way, we are expecting to hear something from the former president. Usually he likes to speak before going into the courtroom. Certainly cameras and microphones are in position. So we do expect that the former president will have something to say, especially in regards to him not being able to offer his closing argument in court today. Adrienne, Markie.
Yeah, and if he makes those remarks, we will, of course, take those live. Dre Clark, thanks so much outside that courthouse this morning.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.